Welcome back to CIA Declassified. The stage is set in the mid-1960s, a period of peak urban expansion and growing civil unrest. The agency had a problem. The drugs that worked in the controlled silence of a laboratory didn't always work in the chaos of the real world. To truly master human behavior, they needed to see how chemicals behaved in the wind, in the subway tunnels, and in the water supplies of bustling American cities. They needed to know if they could incapacitate a crowd or influence a neighborhood without a single person realizing they had been dosed. It was the transition from individual interrogation to mass atmospheric control. They didn't just want to change a mind. They wanted to change the air itself. This was MKFIELD. Why name a project so bluntly? The cryptonym MKFIELD was established by the technical services staff to distinguish in situ testing from laboratory-bound research. Records from the 1977 Church Committee hearings indicate that field was a functional designation. It signaled that the experiment had moved into the field, meaning the public domain. Unlike other cryptonyms that were random, MKFIELD was a direct internal instruction that the safety protocols of a controlled environment were to be bypassed in favor of real-world applicability. MKFIELD was the agency's attempt to turn the environment into a weapon. Launched as an extension of earlier behavioral research, MKFIELD focused on the operational application of chemical substances on unwitting populations in public spaces. A quote from a Declassified 1963 project overview: "The requirement is for a delivery system that is undetectable to the primary senses while maintaining a high degree of potency in an open-air environment." The agency utilized modified crook and ladder trucks and specialized exhaust systems on cars to spray chemical agents into the air of major metropolis. From a quote from the Office of Scientific Intelligence: "Testing on volunteers is no longer sufficient. We must determine the environmental variables." End quote. MKFIELD researchers tested vulnerary agents designed to be absorbed through the skin of people walking through a fine and visible mist. Logs describe Project Bacchus, a subset of field testing that focused on the vulnerability of the New York City subway system to aerosolized biological stimulants. The agency experimented with fluorescent tracers to see how far a chemical cloud could travel through a city's ventilation system before losing its incapacitating power. Researchers documented the use of unwitting prostitutes to administer drugs to targets in safe houses to see how these substances affected social behavior in a field setting. Records indicate that the agency tested odorless incapacitants in crowded bars and restaurants to see if they could induce sleep or confusion in a localized group. One branch of the study looked at water table contamination, calculating how much LSD would be required to influence the inhabitants of a mid-sized city via the reservoir. MKFIELD utilized microencapsulation to protect chemicals from breaking down in sunlight, ensuring they stayed active longer in the streets. The program was officially suspended following the internal audit by Richard Helms in 1973, though many of the dispersal technologies were retained by the military. The agency collaborated with the Army Chemical Corps at Fort Detrick to develop specialized nozzles that created droplets small enough to be inhaled deep into the lungs. Records prove that the agency conducted sea spray tests off the coast of California to see if a coastal fog could be used to carry behavioral modifiers into a city. MKFIELD researchers analyzed the psychological impact of mysterious local outbreaks of illness, noting how mass anxiety increased following an unwitting dose. Records show the agency used suitcase dispensers in airports to test the dispersal of chemicals in high-security, high-traffic transit hubs. The project identified that atmospheric inversion layers, where warm air traps cool air near the ground, were the perfect conditions for a field dosing operation. MKFIELD documentation reveals that researchers monitored local hospital admissions following a test to see if doctors could identify the chemical cause. The agency developed timed-released canisters that could be hidden in trash cans or bushes and activated remotely by a radio signal. One declassified memo discusses the ethical deniability of using substances that mimic the symptoms of a common cold or flu to mask the behavioral modifier. Technical logs confirm that MKFIELD operations were often conducted under the guise of pollution studies or weather research to avoid suspicion. The program established that crowd neutralization was possible using less than 1 gram of certain concentrated aerosols per city block. Declassified budgets show that MKFIELD utilized unvouchered funds to rent unmarked panel vans used as mobile laboratories during urban spray missions. Researchers utilized simulant bacteria such as, I'm going to butcher this, Serratia marcescens, Serratia space marcescens, to track how actual biological weapons would drift through the streets of San Francisco. A quote from a 1966 declassified internal audit. The public remains entirely unaware of the atmospheric shifts we have induced, validating the covert nature of the delivery platforms. End quote. Agency logs confirm that MKFIELD tests were often coordinated with local civil defense drills to provide a plausible explanation for any unusual sightings of personnel in gas masks. One experiment involved releasing a chemical marker into the air conditioning system of a federal building to measure the rate of contamination among government employees. The project tested adhesive chemicals that could be sprayed on sidewalks, ensuring the substance was carried into homes on the soles of people's shoes. Records show that the agency tracked wind velocity profiles for over 50 American cities to determine which were the most chemically vulnerable. MKFIELD documentation includes sketches of hidden nozzles camouflaged as fire hydrants or decorative architectural features. The project investigated the use of crop duster planes for massive low-altitude dispersals over suburban populations during the night. Documents mention Operation Lac, where zinc cadmium sulfide was sprayed over large swaths of the Midwest to simulate a biological attack. The agency maintained surveillance posts in high-rise buildings to photograph the behavior of crowds below after an aerosol release. A quote from a TSS scientist whose name has been redacted: "We have successfully turned the cityscape into a laboratory." End quote. Technical data confirms that MKFIELD researchers experimented with synergistic dosing, where 2 harmless chemicals were released separately to form a potent drug once inhaled together. Records prove the agency used high-pressure steam lines in industrial areas to help aerosolize heavier chemical compounds. MKFIELD logs describe a mock crisis where agents distributed drugged free samples of cigarettes to observe the effects on a random population. The project analyzed urban microclimates, noting that the heat generated by a city can actually pull chemicals upward, requiring specific heavy droplet formulations. Declassified maps show dosing zones centered around schools and transit centers to maximize the social disruption metrics. One memo suggests the agency considered using the New York World's Fair as a testing ground for mass dispersal due to the diverse demographic mix. Logs show that MKFIELD technicians wore civilian clothing and used hidden backpack sprayers while walking through crowded parks. The agency research confirmed that invisible aerosols could cause mass hallucinations if the concentration reached a specific threshold in a confined space, like a subway car. Final project reports emphasize that the invisibility of the agent was the most critical factor in preventing public panic during a test. When we look at the declassified atmospheric logs, the absolute heaviest redactions, representing over 98% of the chemical dispersal data, are found in documents titled Deployment Matrix for Urban Centers. This document is almost entirely blacked out, specifically the section on integration with civilian misting infrastructure, which is missing. Why is the agency hiding the blueprints for how they use existing city pipes to deliver chemicals? The most enduring theory linked to MKFIELD is the chemtrail phenomenon. This speculation suggests that the persistent white trails left by aircraft are not condensation, but mood stabilizers or barium salts released to pacify the population. Theorists argue the redacted logs prove that commercial aviation was hijacked decades ago to serve as a massive high-altitude MKFIELD delivery platform. Fringe gossip, looking at the microparticulate manifest, argue that the agency has developed smart dust, microscopic sensors that can be inhaled. They claim the redactions hide a plan to track your physical location and heart rate from inside your lungs, using the air as a surveillance network. Speculation suggests the redacted hydrological intervention files prove that the water fluoridation is a cover for a more advanced behavioral agent. This rumor posits that fluoride makes the brain more suggestible to the frequency-based signals discussed in the MKFIELD technical annex. Rumors circulate that MKFIELD isn't just a chemical, but electronic. Some suspect the redactions hide a link between atmospheric spraying and HAARP, where the sprayed metallic particles in the air allow high-frequency waves to vibrate the emotions of a city. Is that cooling mist in the outdoor mall just water? A rumor suggests that smart city misting systems are the 2026 evolution of MKFIELD. Theorists claim the redacted pages prove these systems disperse calming agents to prevent civil unrest during heat waves or high-tension election cycles. Whispers suggest the biological mimicry redactions prove the agency uses genetically modified pollen to deliver chemicals. They claim your seasonal allergies are actually a side effect of a mass dosing operation that targets specific genetic markers. Some believe the redacted pages hide a store scent program. They argue the agency works with retailers to pump compliance pheromones into the air to increase spending and decrease critical thinking while you shop. There's a rumor that the blacked out subterranean airflow studies hide a program where amnesia gas is tested on subway commuters. This theory claims that if you've ever had a time slip on the train, you were part of an agency field test. A modern theory claims the agency hijacked the vaping industry to conduct MKFIELD tests. They suggest the redacted files show that certain e-liquids are delivery vehicles for modifiers that interact with the aerosolized steam. Rumor says the black bars cover a home intervention protocol. They posit that the agency can push behavioral agents through your central air if your smart thermostat detects your heart rate is elevated during a protest broadcast. Some imagine the redacted logs prove that stadium fog machines are used to keep crowds from becoming too rowdy. They claim the special effects at concerts are actually MKFIELD suppressants. Conspiracy enthusiasts argue that mosquito spraying trucks are the perfect cover for MKFIELD dispersals. They believe the redactions prove the agency uses these trucks to quiet specific neighborhoods that show high levels of digital dissent. Rumors circulate that cloud seeding is used to wash specific chemicals out of the air and into the water supply of target communities to ensure a 100% absorption rate. Gossip suggests that electronic air fresheners are actually MKFIELD receivers that release agents when your phone detects you are searching for unsanctioned information. Some believe the missing pages describe an oxygen depletion experiment where the agency slightly lowers oxygen in skyscrapers to induce a state of mild compliant lethargy. Whispers argue that the black bars hide a social lubricant aerosol, which is used at high-level diplomatic summits to make the participants more agreeable to agency-preferred terms. Speculation persists that traffic jams are artificially induced so the agency can test the rage profiles of drivers breathing in MKFIELD additives through their car's air intake. Theories suggest the reactions hide a conductive aerosol that turns the air into a giant antenna, allowing for better tracking of citizens who don't carry cell phones. Fringe gossip claims the agency doses pet food so that the animals exhale MKFIELD agents, turning every house pet into a mobile behavioral modifier for their owners. Some suspect the reactions hide a detergent additive that releases a mood-stabilizing gas when clothes are heated in a dryer, ensuring the agency's influence follows you into your bedroom. Lastly, some rumors suggest the 7,000 pages that are redacted prove that the agency has scripted the very scent of the world, using signature smells to trigger subconscious feelings of safety and obedience. Was MKFIELD a success? Tactically, it was an invisible triumph. The agency successfully moved behavioral control out of the syringe and into the open air, proving they could dose thousands of people without a single witness. Strategically, it was a cold victory. It proved that the field could be managed like a laboratory. The project was a success because it allowed the agency to refine non-lethal incapacitation, which became the cornerstone of modern crowd control. It proved that mass-scale behavioral modification didn't require individual consent, only a favorable wind. The agency gained the ability to sedate entire urban populations without their knowledge, creating a template for invisible governance. This operational success effectively ended the need for overt force in social management, favoring the subtle hand of chemistry. It effectively demonstrated that a quiet population is often a medicated one. As far as technological and operational breakthroughs are concerned, the open air lab led to breakthroughs that define the modern era, such as micro-aerosol delivery. This 1960s tech is now the standard for inhalable insulin and other medical nebulizers, allowing medicine to bypass the stomach. Atmospheric drift modeling, MKFIELD research is used in wildfire smoke tracking and pollution forecasting to predict where dangerous air will travel. Non-lethal riot controls. The chemical incapacitants developed in the field led to advanced CS gas and pepper spray formulations that are safer and more effective. And environmental surveillance. The tracer particle tech is used in HVAC security to detect if a building's air supply has been compromised by a biohazard. MKFIELD reminds us that the laboratory has no walls. When the air feels a little too still or a mist feels a little too heavy, remember the men in the mask with the spray cans. The agency may have closed the project, but the technology of the invisible fog is now woven into the very infrastructure of our cities. You are not just a citizen in the eyes of the open air lab, you are a data point breathing in the experiment. The sky above you isn't just weather, it's a delivery system that hasn't forgotten the lessons of the 60s. Every breath you take is a testament to the fact that the most effective control is the one you can't see, smell, or taste. True freedom begins with the air, and yet the air is the one thing we can never truly protect from the reach of the agency. Even the birds in the park might be breathing a script we haven't read yet. The wind doesn't just blow, it carries the weight of 100 secret missions. Thanks for listening, and join us next time as we examine the sonic screwdriver. In the hardware labs of the 1970s, the agency developed a tool to bypass the security and boot up sequences of specific hardware devices. We'll uncover the signal injection manifest and the hardware backdoor blueprints. Join us next time for the universal key. In the meantime, I'll see you in the archives.